listening to the Paul Young Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Paul Young Podcast. I wrote this just a few days ago, not very long ago, and we're going to get it aired as quickly as we can get it on there because it's about recent events. And what I wanted to do was give people a little insight into what a week is like. Now, understand that every week's not like this. This was the week that happened when I wrote this. So this was fresh, and it had to do with a bunch of different things, surprises and all that. Some weeks are much more focused on family. Some weeks are much more focused on projects. This will give you a little sense of the surprising changes in terms of events that can happen in the course of a week. So these are notes from April 28th to May the 4th of 2025. The surprise for me is that I have a Substack. I don't know if you folks are familiar with Substack, but it's becoming more popular as just a place to communicate and write stuff. I didn't know that I had one. I have no idea how I got one. It's W.M. Paul Young, and I'm not even sure how to get there on Substack. I'm sure if you go online and look up Substack and put in W.M. Paul Y, you can find it. There's already a lot of Substacks out there, and I don't even know what exactly it's about. I just know that now I have one. In fact, I looked on it today, and a recent interview I did with a dear friend, Jim Henderson from Seattle, is on there because we did the interview via Substack. So anyway, I have one. I only found out because some folks had subscribed to it. 17 so far, and it says 17 plus 2. I have no idea what that means. Like, I have no idea how I got a Substack. But here I am. So the surprise is I have one. And the surprise for the 17 plus 2 is that I'm writing anything on my Substack. And so I wrote what I'm going to read to you and am reading to you. I wrote a piece on Substack. And this is what I wrote. And it had to do with the week of April 28th to May the 4th. If you could see my approximately 300 square foot office, it's a total mess. I mean, sticky notes all over the wall, papers all over the floor, grandchildren coming in and out, camping and drawing things and handing me notes and asking for blank papers and markers, which is a yes. My desk is hardly visible under stacks of paper. I probably need to go through some of them. And there's bills in there to pay and books that I have been asked to read and I would like to read, but likely will never get to until some morning energy is not consumed by responding to emails and phone calls and other important work, projects and stuff like that. So over in the corner of my office, and where I'm sitting right now, is my tiny podcast studio, paulyoungpodcast.com, right? It's got a round little table, small, has a computer and a microphone. And it's also surrounded by papers with stacks on a TV tray that's right next to me. My walls have bookshelves. I probably have given away a few thousand books, so it's a little more manageable now. But there's pictures and other art, including lots of kids' drawings scotch taped to the walls. I have gifts that people have given me, and some of it is really amazing things. Let me walk through my last week, and I'll give you a glimpse into my world. Again, please understand I have no 2 weeks that are close to the same, and this is only a generalized view of 1 week. Kim and I have a calendar at the house, and I have one on my phone, but even what is on those is usually altered or interrupted. Probably similar to most of you. I have a bit of a routine. I get up sometime between 6 in the morning and 6:30. I do a little workout. I have this phone app that helps me. I take a 20-minute sauna. Yeah, I know that's a luxury, but it's really helpful for me. I don't go over 190 degrees, then I shower, I dress, I try to figure out something to eat for breakfast. I'm on this anti-inflammatory diet, which is not a luxury, believe me, because we are trying to figure out why I have these chronic muscle and joint pains. Now, please don't send me remedies or solutions. They would end up on the floor in one of my piles around here. But it means that my diet is very limited. Been on it now for over 70 days, and we're slowly reintroducing foods back in to find out what my food sensitivities are. This last week I didn't travel, which changes the schedule tremendously, and it has its own set of challenges and adventures. So let's start. April 28th, Monday, I answered some of the 50 or so emails as well as some of the backlog. I destroyed the spam and the junk mail. I responded to text. I checked and caught up with WhatsApp, where I communicate with some of the people overseas. And at 9 a.m. got a Zoom call, got on one with Miriam in Cairo, Egypt. Now, a week ago, I found out that there is a mental health counseling center in Egypt called the Shack Counseling Center. The Shack Counseling Egypt. And it's based on the book. Crazy, right? It is a center for both Christians and non-Christians and was founded by professional women. As Miriam says in her initial email, your book touched my heart in a profound way, and it gave me language and a hope to not only myself, but many of the emotional and spiritual journeys we work through with people in our space. Naming our place the Shack felt like the most authentic way to honor the kind of safe, sacred ground you created through your words. So on this call, they took their computer through the offices, all decorated with shack motif, including the reception area. In fact, reception area looks like the shack. In order to be a client, to be served in their offices, you have to first watch the Shack movie at least once. Can you imagine? This is amazing to me, and it's so honoring. So I had a long conversation with her, and then we figured out some things that we were going to do together. 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., I spent it on the Zoom call with Janet Schvatal, an American soprano. And she's a theater stage actor and a singer. Most of her work she does is in Germany, so she's fluent in German. She spends half of her life there. She has a place, about 40 minutes from our house in a suburb of Portland called Beaverton, where she actually grew up. And so she and I are working on the libretto, which is the musical text for a musical stage production, and the script, which is the spoken words, combining the two so that we're working on a big major theater stage play production for the Shack. It is quite a huge undertaking and a steep learning curve for me, but a lot of fun, a lot of challenge. Janet is the force behind this project and is a dear friend. The stage production will originate and will be workshopped and then initially performed in Germany, in both German and English. It's grueling and exhilarating at the same time. We've been working on this libretto for, a year and a half maybe now, and we're almost done, at least the full draft for the libretto and the script. And maybe another time what do they call it in business? Open the kimono, which gives you a peek inside the whole process. So, the rest of the day was filled with phone calls, some with really hurting people, and others simply logistical about travel and event arrangements, upcoming trips. Then supper and family stuff. I try to keep evenings and as much as possible weekends for Kim and the kids and the grandkids, plus lots of chores and things to be done. I'm mostly successful about that, but project work tends to invade at least one of the weekend days, and to-do lists often invade the weekdays. So that was sort of my Monday. April 29th, Tuesday, I set aside to record some of these podcasts. It never happened. Instead, the day became a series of phone conversations with precious people in crisis, some friends, some strangers. Seemed emails were much the same, and by the end of the day, I was really exhausted. I looked at my mess, and it didn't seem that I had accomplished anything, but I knew I had been invited into moments and listening and conversations that were exactly right, and the timing for them was right. Wednesday, April 30th. More of the same, but different folks and some deeply theological texting and phone calls. Janet and I worked again, this time from 9:30 till 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the script libretto. We are working closely with an Irish-American musician named Michael Patrick Kelly, who lives in Germany, where he's actually a huge performer, hardly known this side of the pond. Good friend who I love dearly, with an amazing story. Good guy to have around, too. He speaks 6 languages. Part of what Janet and I do is to weave into the libretto original music that Michael is writing for us. The way he does an album, and he's mostly with Sony, is that he starts with 80 songs and then works at whittling them down. So in the midst of all that, he gave us 28 potential songs to go into the musical play production. It's quite amazing. Just as an aside and quickly, he was part of a family, the Kelly family, in which they were buskers on the streets of Germany, and they hit it big. I mean, monster big. And Michael was sort of the Michael Jackson of his family, and it got big. They bought this castle, and I think Michael was about 19 when he just was done, and he stood on the parapet and was going to step off and was intersected with the Holy Spirit. So he walked away from the music world and into a monastery for 6 years. And he was about to take his vows, or however that works. But his superior said, I'm not going to let you do this. You're going to have a bigger effect out there than you would ever have in here. So they booted him out. And since then, his musical career has been meteoric. Again, incredibly well known, but he is part of the work that we're doing on the musical. At the end of the day, on Wednesdays, I join a weekly community of friends who deeply love each other, and it's on Zoom. It includes, as many of you know who he is, Baxter Kruger, who's a theologian. He's written books like Across All Worlds, The Shack Revisited, Patmos is his fiction work, Jesus in the Undoing of Adam, The Great Dance, and lots more, all of which I would highly recommend. And so that evening gathering is just a sharing time together. There's a dozen or so of us on very different walks and experiences of life. There's no platforms, no stage, no notoriety, just love for Jesus and each other. It's really a form of church, and I'm so grateful for it. I usually make it most of the time, but not all the time. May 1st, Thursday, 9 a.m. to 11:45 a.m., I recorded with Miriam from Cairo almost 3 hours of podcast work for the community related to the Shack Counseling Egypt, which they then can break apart. They can broadcast or use in one form or another. One of the projects that we want to do together is they really would like to get the Shack into Arabic, which we have tried a couple different times and it has not worked out. But she has all sorts of resources and people who would love to do that. So we'll see how that works out. After the email, she wrote some questions that she would like me to address. Listen to these. What are some of the inner battles you had to face along the way? Who or what helped you keep going when it felt almost impossible? In your journey, how did you reconnect with your true self, the part that pain tried to silence? For someone listening who feels lost or disconnected from themselves, what first small step would you encourage them to take? How do you personally stay anchored in your real identity when challenges come? How did your faith help you through your healing? Was there a moment when you truly felt that grace was stronger than your pain? Forgiveness is one of the hardest paths. How do we keep forgiving others and ourselves? How do we open the door to deeper freedom and wholeness, and how did you do it? Through everything you have lived, what small daily habits help you stay connected to your healing and true self? If someone listening right now feels completely broken and lost, what simple hope would you offer them today? And then she says, I'm considering launching a Zoom book club around the Shack here in Egypt. Would be honored if you would help me with that. Finally, if the Shack community has a family day, would it be possible for you to join online for a few minutes just to say hello? Which is an easy yes. That's an easy yes. So her note gives you a little bit more insight into how I spend my time. It might take me a while, but I'll work at some of these questions. And that's why if you happen to send me an email or something, it often takes me some time to get back because the backlog gets pretty big. Most of you are probably aware of my activity and relationship with men on death row in Tennessee. And at noon on Thursday, I listened to a podcast hosted by Mike Farrell. Do you remember him? Some of you oldies. He was B.J. Honeycutt in MASH, and he has become a real strong adversary of the death penalty. And he was interviewing a brilliant research writer, death penalty expert named Karina Barrett Lane, who just released a very groundbreaking book called Secrets of the Killing State, The Untold Story of Lethal Injection. Now, lethal injection is nothing like what people usually think. In the popular imagination, it's a slight pinch and a swift nodding off to forever sleep. You would think that it would be performed by well-qualified medical professions, that it's regulated and carefully conducted, that it usually provides a humane death. In reality, however, not one of those things is true. Fake science, torturous drugs, inept execution, prison problems, decades of state secrecy that have created an execution method hardwired to go wrong in countless ways. Listening to this podcast was heart-crushing. Probably because this is not some sort of objective ideological conversation for me. It's real time, real people, real flesh and blood people that I love and am in relationship with. Ironically, I went to the clinic to get my blood drawn right after this. Just one simple thing. The average in the United States length of time it takes to kill someone, and it is killing because on the death certificate for a person executed, it says homicide as the cause of death. The average time with lethal injection takes 18 minutes. The record for how long it's taken is almost 3 hours. And I can't begin to tell you the excruciating process. But again, if you want to know more, it's called Secrets of the Killing State, The Untold Story of Lethal Injection. Thankfully, that evening I went to a track meet for one of my grandsons. Evie went with us. She's 3, granddaughter. And her report was, I went to Houston's meat track and watched him run around in circles. That night I had a very large seizure, and I crashed into bed at 7 o'clock and slept 10 hours straight. Friday morning started with Grandma and Grandpa Day with 2 of our grandchildren who live a little over an hour away. Went out to lunch with them and their family. Unfortunately, I couldn't eat anything because of this diet that I mentioned. Oh well. Made it home in time to get on a Zoom call for a 2-hour conversation with a small group of women who had gathered, some business women, some emerging from abusive backgrounds, all working hard toward faith and wholeness, and it was fantastic. The theme was finding your voice, and I read them 3 of David Tenson's poems, each which are called Who Took Your Voice? I called David one day, texted him, I said, David, I have this great idea for a poem you should write. He said, what's that? I said, entitle it Who Took Your Voice? Within 24 hours, he had sent me 3 different poems, and then he sent me another one that someone who had heard about these poems also wrote, and they're all fantastic. Here's one of them. Maybe your no was not enough, and dominance pushed it aside like it was never there, and you learned your words didn't matter. Maybe your silence was required, and coercion whispered its lie that secrets were safer, and you learned the truth equaled pain. Maybe your story was cut short, and shame covered your mouth to filter in the darkness, and you learned to only be positive. Maybe now that you are safe, the older, stronger you can stand beside the little one inside and begin to ask, who took your voice? Maybe you were not created to have your boundaries crossed and your no dishonored. Maybe you were not created to hold all those secrets and all that pain. Just maybe you were not created to tell a partial story, to be entirely accepted. Who took your voice? Friday, I received something in the mail. If you go on Substack, I have pictures there. I might be able to put them into the notes also for the podcast, but I'll ask Nico. What it was is a cover for a Bible, a leather cover for a Bible. And every part of that cover was made for me personally by a very dear friend, Oscar. And there's leather work in the binding, there's chiseled imprints. The front of it has a traditional cross with the hanging robe on it, and the back of it has praying hands, and it says Paul Young. It says Holy Bible on the side. It's beautiful, intricately made. And Oscar did everything. He did the binding, he did the painting and the art, and I didn't know he was going to do this, so it was a surprise. On the inside, he wrote, Oscar Smith, Death Row, Unit 2, April 5th, 2025. Oscar he's scheduled to be executed on May 22nd of this month. They've reinstated the protocol after a 2-year moratorium because they found that the drugs they were using were 5 years past their use-by date. We're hoping that there'll be a legal stop, a stay for his execution simply because there has been so much secrecy about what the new drug protocol is. As of now, he's scheduled to be executed in just a couple weeks. Lord have mercy. I'm kind of falling apart, and I was when I wrote it. I was told that this would probably be the last gift that Oscar will ever make for someone on this side of the veil. Saturday on May 3rd, and I couldn't stop grieving. And I wrote for Saturday, I said, last night I received back from my publisher the red line edit for the sequel for The Shack. There's no book title yet. There's still a lot to be done, including changes that I've already planned to make myself, but this is an arduous but necessary part of the process of publishing a book. It's a bit like my editor told me. It's a bit like being thrown into ice water. Shocking, but it's exhilarating too. From the editor, she added this written note. I have never in my 25 plus years working in this industry have had such fear and trembling when touching a manuscript. The sense of being engaged in sacred work has been palpable for me since I began this editing work 2 months ago. I want to express my awe for what you have taken upon yourself and what you've accomplished in writing this book. You have taken on both an extremely intense creative challenge and a profound spiritual burden. I can feel the tips of my fingers burning as I type up this letter to you. I finished my Substack by saying, I end this note, and tonight I'm going to be speaking at a fundraiser here in Portland for L'Arche, carrying on the work of Jean Vanier. They have a worldwide network of where people with and without intellectual disabilities build friendship and community and live together. They have homes in which to share life together, and I'm honored to be asked. Janish Fatal, her daughter Naya, are providing the music. So there it is. Brief overview of what a week, or 6 days actually, in my world might look like, although never to be repeated. Thank you for hanging in there while I told some of these stories and you shared a week with me. Grace and peace.